All right. That is the fake news now. That's talking about eliminating fake news, which is basically shutting down the internet, for censorship on the internet. And that, to me, is one of the biggest incredible fallouts of this past election that we had. Do you know we
just this election?
Yeah, I know, right?
Just this one?
Just this one. Do you know we handed over the internet rights for the most part to the UN in early October?
You told me about that at lunch one day.
I know. Not many people knew about that, but so we're going to have the UN set our policies and parameters of what can be said on the online or what cannot be said. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to fall out with that. That's going to be interesting. So the question comes down to, is this going to blow up in their face in the mainstream media, or we could say fake news if we want? I mean, anybody can call anything fake news if they want, right?
Partial news.
Partial news, yeah. But is it going to blow up in their face, or is there going to be leadership that's going to allow the internet to become free? And honestly, at this point, I don't know. I mean, it seems like there could be, but you don't know until you see some actions. It's not what people say; it's what they do. So, are the globalists on the run? Or are we just adding more to the globalists right now? I mean, I don't know. We will find out, because we have a founder of the Collective Evolution, Joe Martino, joining us today.
Stoked.
I know, he's joining us today.
I'm so stoked.
And we're going to get down to these truths here in a second. In fact, I'd like to be able to share a little bit about what Joe has done, if you don't mind. Do you mind? Joe, I know you're on the line, but can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right. So Joe's the creator or was one of the founders of the grassroots organization created in 2009. Collective Evolution. You probably seen Collective Evolution. They're all over the internet. They have millions of followers. And one of the world's largest and most popular alternative media production and community outlets that gives readers an opportunity to reshape their everyday way of thinking. Collective Evolution's content ranges from a full-length articles to videos to live events, all of which share one common goal: to raise awareness about how our world functions and to encourage conscious change that moves beyond it. Isn't that just incredible? So if you'd like to join in our conversation today with Joe, as well as getting to really some hot topics right now, call 646-668-8246. That's 646-668-8246. We're also on Facebook Live. Hi, guys. How you doing? Wave to him, Joe. And we're also recording this, and will be put up on YouTube as well. So we're doing our part to get the word out. So Joe, listen, welcome, Joe. We really appreciate having you here. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me here as well. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, this is the new buzzword that came, I guess, a week ago, or maybe less. Fake news, right? So, and your organization is about to launch a whole news network, nightly news, right?
Yeah, we're looking to basically launch a news network in the face of fake news.
Are you guys? So, is your Indiegogo campaign still going, or is that over now?
It is still going. We actually reached out to Indiegogo because our campaign was supposed to end about I think it was something like 8 or 9 days ago now, and we reached out to them saying, hey, we had a Facebook ban. We had multiple wrongful Facebook bans during our course of our campaign. We couldn't get it going as we wanted it to. Not only that, we're about to head down to Standing Rock, and we kind of pleaded with them saying, hey, like, this is what we're about, we wanted to do. And they extended our campaign to a full 60 days for us. So that was awesome.
Yeah. Well, can you hear me, Joe? You guys turned it off. So you put it back on. All right. There you go. That's better. So the over in Standing Rock right now, that's where you just came back from, right?
Yeah.
And tell us, what's the latest update on that, because that's just on everybody's minds right now.
You weren't hosed, were you?
No, we actually got out of there a few days ago and then made the drive back. It was a 20-hour drive back to Toronto, so that took us a couple of days. So we heard about the hosing incident that took place. I believe it was not last night, but the night before. And we were kind of like, oh, wow, we just missed that. But the latest down there is, the one thing that hit me the hardest when, you come onto the camp where a lot of the people who are camping out are staying, and it hits you like you realize there is no media here. Like, nobody is covering this. And when I say that, I mean from the mainstream side. Like, there's nothing going on. Robert F. Kennedy pulls up in an SUV with a whole bunch of security, and you're expecting all the cameras and the clicks and everything. and there's nobody there except for
Wow.
alternative media or independent media that are saying, okay, great. Now we can have our field day telling the truth because, mainstream media isn't diving in there just trying to get in there before everybody. So that was one of the biggest hard hitting things, was realizing that nobody's really covering this, and it's odd given the scale of what's happening. It's odd.
Yeah, no, and it is odd. And not only is it odd, what it kind of gives the idea is that the mainstream media still has a certain amount of power to be able to pull something like that off. But I have to say, we're creating two worlds. We're creating the internet news, and then we're creating the fake mainstream, or continue with the fake mainstream news, and now and that's why I believe you have such polarized people in the United States. I mean, you could sit down and talk to somebody, and what you've been keeping up with. You know what's going on with the globalists and the New World Order, and what's going on with GMOs and glyphosate and vaccines and all that, and with Talking Rock. But when you sit down with other people, they're getting a whole nother scenario, a whole nother world of reality. And how do you blend the two? I mean, how do you break past these two different polarized viewpoints, because they're getting two opposite areas of information? Yeah,
so it's an interesting question because, like you said, people are breaking off into two very different camps, and I believe we've been able to reach so many people because of a little technique that we do, where we try and utilize what's going on in the world and events that a lot of people are paying attention to, and use those as a springboard to help bring people a different perspective, a different aspect to what's going on, and also inserting, the conscious perspective to it all, right? The big picture perspective. When you look at a specific event that everybody's talking about, it's almost like if you're able to put out a headline that someone's going to recognize as like, oh yeah, that's that event that I'm interested, that I'm hearing about. And then suddenly they click that and they start reading that. And now all of a sudden they're hearing a totally different perspective on it. They're like, oh, wait a minute, what just happened, right? So that's been our approach, is to try and get people on that side of, they're curious, they're not quite sure yet what's going on, but utilizing all these events that are taking place to help get them to as we say inside, everybody has that inkling inside that something isn't quite right. And we just try and flick that inkling a little bit to remind them hey, you're on the right track here.
I call it the Matrix.
We got another Morpheus over here. No, but you're absolutely right, because just like, for example, I'm wearing my vaxxed information here. I was in Austin doing my own little raising awareness with the vaccines and what's going on with the CDC and the corruption and the FDA and the big pharma, now colluding with the Department of Defense, Murder Incorporated, killing these holistic doctors. If I just focus just on that alone. And then when other people, like you said, they look at the mainstream media, or they see nothing, they hear nothing, then either I'm a liar or they're lying. It comes down to that polarized belief, doesn't it? Either I'm lying about this, or they're not talking about it, so they must be colluding with these people that we're saying that they're colluding with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you pick one issue or whatever, and it could lead to that, pulling that thread off that blanket and realize the level of corruption, the globalists, the mind control, the whole work down the line, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what you're doing is great. And what you also have on there, and you guys just don't talk about, what's going on with the football every Sunday. I mean, you talk about some real scary stuff in the sense of people's lives being affected by, like, for example, the GCMAF and the Nagalase that's being put into the vaccines that these holistic doctors, Dr. Gonzalez, Dr. Bradstreet, all the way down the line, have been murdered for. Although the Murder Incorporated, Department of Defense says it's suicide, right? Mm-hmm. Suicide with a shotgun to your chest and then a shotgun to your head. I mean, I don't know how that works, but
execution style. Yeah. Now, I also have noticed that some of the people that have always kind of been on the forefront of global activism, Susan Sarandon mentioned you guys in a BBC interview with WikiLeaks. as that's really the real source of news, which I thought was interesting.
So tell us about that. What is your plan? I mean, I'm so excited by having you on because we're such big supporters here for you guys, because we know the next level is to have an alternative news. Real, honest news, not just news just to be like, hey, fear gotcha news, or, like Alex Jones has some good stuff, but it is fear. You have a real evolution. Like you want to raise consciousness. You're focusing on raising consciousness and developing that, as well as getting truth out. That's exactly the combination we need. We need everyone to be calm, raise our frequency, let's raise our vibration and move forward. So what gave you this concept? You always had it simmering, or was it something that just hit you as you kind of working your way through it?
Yeah, so it's funny because way back, probably about nine and a half years ago, I had seen Zeitgeist for the first time. And that kind of rattled my cage a little bit because, you're starting to see all these things that you feel inside that's not quite right. I mean, I grew up Catholic, so I was always kind of feeling like, yeah, there's something not quite right here, but I don't know what it is. And you see the things happening in the world. I mean, for me, it was the education system always seemed like a really, like there was something going on there. And when I saw that film, it was like light bulbs going off in my head saying like, okay, well, this is finally making sense. For the first time in my life, the world is starting to make sense. And that felt good. That felt relieving. That felt like, man didn't just somehow end up here. We, it was been carefully guided to this particular corrupt point. And so for me, it became a journey of wanting to put that information out there for people so that they could see that. And I had a friend at the time that we were working on doing that. And then we had met someone who was in some of our early documentaries and even in our third one too. And he really gave a perspective on things that awakened like a whole side of questioning, who we really are, developing and expanding my own individual consciousness, and then, wanting others to go through that, because you realize that change that happens within affects everything that goes on in your life. And then it affects how people organize and how people do things and express in the physical world as well. So it became about, really looking at what these other outlets were doing, which, was positive work in the sense that it was helping to expose things. But like you were saying, sometimes came with a lot of anger or a lot of judgment or a lot of identifying with a particular side or not. And we felt that it was important that people were able to look at things through a lens of neutrality, meaning, not trying to say so badly like this is right or this is wrong or this is this or this is that, but just see things for what they are and then make the decision. Is this okay? Do we want to keep doing this? Does this make sense? Right? So some people will say, oh, some of the stuff you talk about is negative. Like some of the more really spiritual folk will say, it's very negative. And we're like, well, if you look at it that way, I mean, it's presented in a dramatic form. It's presented very simply. We're giving you the information because if this information does not get out, how do you know how to move forward or where you want to go if you don't know what's going on? So I think that's an important factor, is to understand, like there's some stuff that's about to come out soon, which we're working on, that is going to upset a lot of people. And by that, I mean, it's just because of what it entails and what it involves and who it involves in this world. And these are the types of things that if people don't go through this process of learning and realizing just how sinister some of the stuff is that's going on, we're not really going to have that kick to say enough's enough. We got to change what we're doing here. So it's all part and parcel to be able to, from a neutral place, look at what's happening in the world and say, and accept, okay, this is happening. We can't keep turning a blind eye. And that's something that we focus on a lot, is maintaining that neutrality when looking at these events.
That's better. Sorry. We're having a little volume control here on our end, not on your end. All right. When you actually have people come into the news and try to fear it up, or fear it down, I should say, lower the frequency, and we get caught up into that, and you get very emotional. Like everything's so emotional now. Having a rational, logical perspective to the news, like what you guys are doing, is not only critical, but it's sane. Where having the emotionalness and reaction to the news, which is today, you're a racist, you're homophobe. I mean, this is psyops. This is like CIA psyop talk. This is not even real news. It's just, how do we get everybody emotionally charged and hating each other so we can stay in power type of stuff. But when you have this, and then you have organizations like Snopes, or Wikipedia that perpetuates that type of lies. I mean, literally lies. What's your avenue outside of just? Is there any strategy you guys are going to have besides just sharing logically, not emotionally, what is going on? Because I agree wholeheartedly. You have to be able to look at the negative reality to be able to know what you want to change to a positive reality. That's just a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to add to that list, I mean, the education system is a whole part and parcel of that whole thing. You know, it's perpetuating a lot of old information, a lot of lies, a lot of inaccurate information as well. And unfortunately, you know, through that, you create people who, well-intentioned, think that they're informed on something, and so want to help to inform other people. Unfortunately, what those people were informed with was false to begin with. So it gets very challenging. But in terms of what we plan on doing to kind of work through and around this stuff, I mean, we've seen. Okay, I'll just go right back to the election. Hillary losing was one of the first massive signs that the cabal is falling apart. And that she is, or that they're actually losing a lot of control over what they're able to do, that they're, you know, and even from a lot of the sources that we've been talking to on the inside, there's a lot of breakaway groups within CIA, FBI, military, all these groups that no longer want to be part of the cabal's rule because of how much it impacts their lives as well, negatively, right? They're starting to realize that what the cabal's doing is not good, even to them. Like at all. And so you have a lot of these breakaways. And so what's happening is now all of this stuff is being leaked from these inside institutions out into things like WikiLeaks and other sources and stuff like that. And you're now having a power structure that's fighting with itself. And this is, to me, an incredibly inspiring sign, because what you're seeing is the dismantling of something that has been around for so long and up until now has never had to fight for its life. And now it's legitimately fighting for its life. And, you know, as you had mentioned, they do things such as trying to blame one group or another. I mean, it was, you know, for Brexit, it changed every week. First, it was old people, then it was white people, then it was, you know, people who didn't understand anything, then it was uneducated people, and they're doing the same with the election. Well, first it was uneducated people, then it was working class, now it's white people, now it's, you know, and they just go through their list, right? And the purpose of it is to continue to divide. If you identify with any particular, you know, section, you're going to now be mad at the other section. And the best one now is, okay, now it's fake news' fault because they told the truth about what's going on and we can't handle that. And so you're having this war now on all independent media. And that's going to be very interesting because I think people are bright enough out there to say, I can see right through this, and it's going to backfire again in the face, saying, why are you trying to now control media even more so than you already have? You know, and people already don't trust mainstream media as much as they used to. So I think a lot of the stuff that's happening is going to backfire in itself. And I think, yeah, and I think there's, you know, there are things that we've felt inside, like, okay, we should take this direction or take this direction or move away from this. And those are things like, you know, creating good systems outside of Facebook, if possible, to still reach people. Like, those are things to help combat some of what's going on in the short term, to maintain reach. Because like even since this fake news stuff came out, like we've seen a dramatic decrease in the ability for us to reach people through Facebook.
I was going to ask you about that because I just saw last night where I think you posted yesterday, but I was on my Facebook feed last night where you actually were talking about Facebook blocking certain. Well,
Facebook just came out with the seven points of how we were going to censor everyone on Facebook, and that's being driven by the Chinese, my understanding, because that's the best out there in the censorship area. But yeah, so dealing with Facebook, dealing with Twitter now, and you have these guys are part of the cabal, you know, Zuckerberg and the rest of these guys. They're, like I said, there's two groups pulling away, and there are more than two groups. There's groups pulling away from this, and there's a momentum going that direction. My question is, how do you know for sure at this point that Donald Trump is not part of the cabal? But I mean, he put himself. I mean, you put somebody like Pence as vice president. He's been a neocon globalist for a long time. He voted for TPP a couple of years ago. I mean, this guy right down the line is stuff that Donald Trump's not really involved, and they're known historically to put these New World Order folks in these vice president positions to take over once they have a chance to move out the guy who made the change.
Right.
Do you have any concerns on that level?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that anything is possible when it comes to being able to move or not move or impact any particular person. The cabal is going to do what they can. But I started looking at this from the standpoint of everybody everywhere was behind Hillary when it came to the election. They were rigging the actual numbers. They still claim she won popular vote, and I don't think she actually did if you count the numbers properly. They had all the media, everybody in the media behind her. They had all of the mind-controlled Hollywood people backing her and saying, yeah, 100%, and yet she still lost. And it's like, and then apparently she lost her shit. And from what I'm hearing from inside sources, they're freaking out right now. And this whole fake news thing and all this stuff is they're really just trying really, really hard to do whatever they can to continue to dismantle what's happening. And I mean, you have movements of people that are protesting Trump. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a Trump supporter. What I'm saying is that I know he wasn't their guy. He wasn't the one that was supposed to be there. And now that he is there, and everybody saw the look on his face after that Obama meeting, I think he's kind of realizing what's really going on a little bit better than he did before. And I don't know. I mean, some people are feeling like, he could get taken out in some way, or some people are saying maybe he'll just fall under the influence. I mean, the thing is he's not an ideal person in the sense of, he's still very business and bottom line and dollar driven in that sense. And he's like over patriotic about what's going on and how he feels about yeah, exactly. But the only positive side to the whole thing is Hillary's not there. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing, is she's not in there. And so I do believe that it things can go in a number of different directions, and I do believe the cabal is going to fight to do that. But like I said, and even if you sit and you just tune your consciousness into the cabal, the existence of the cabal, the energy of what they do and what they are, you can feel the divide. You can feel the shambles that's happening. I mean, we talk about a shift in consciousness that's happening. That was what we talked about since 2009 when we were talking about this. And we've watched as independent media, some believe in the shift, some don't. Some are, there's spiritual people that are connecting to that, and there's some that are saying, maybe there's not. And what I keep reminding people is, guys, if that shift is real, which my research and my, what I had done for CE3, the latest documentary we had, it ultimately showed that cosmologically, scientifically, based on ancient cultures, all this sort of stuff. If this is in fact real and consciousness is shifting, which I think is becoming evident, then things like this are going to happen. The cabal is going to break apart. They are going to change. They are going to shift. They're not going to have ultimate power forever. So we have to be open to that, is what I'm trying to kind of like throw out there with a lot of people, is be open to seeing the world a little bit differently as consciousness does shift, and as the cabal may or may not lose more and more power as time goes on, because that's going to happen. That's part of it.
That's a good point, because so many people are just scared for change, because change means I have to look at life from a different perspective, and even bad change. It's almost like the Stockholm syndrome. We've been caught up into this belief of the negative news, the world's coming to end, the Hunger Games are on the way, and
the Matrix is,
and we're so conditioned on having this experience that many of the people who are not wanting to let it go, they're rationalizing, they're looking at holding on to whatever excuse, I got to do this for this reason. And I do believe there is a collective evolution going on with our collective consciousness. And as Teal Swan said, we as a world voted for Donald Trump, not so much on just in the voting box, but in collectively that we wanted. It was a battle of, she says, between authentic change and pretentious, and staying pretentiously in that environment. Even though Trump may be this crazy fascist, could turn into this horrible person, who knows? But one thing you got to say about the guy, he's authentic. You may hate everything about him, and we're shifting from this evolution of Piscean to Aquarian, from pretentiousness to authenticness from an individual level of spiritual growth. And so he may have been the spark of that. He may not be the ideal authentic person in this sense, but who is? If you're being yourself, then what else can you ask, right? But but that may be what we're shifting into, and it sounds like you're catching that wave. And not only are you catching that wave, but you're going to be presenting it on the news on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about the authenticity there, it's exactly what, watching all these debates and these things that had gone on, and you're seeing, it's like people are having a field day with Trump because of he runs his mouth, and you're like, okay, yeah, but for the first time ever, right? And again, I'm not supporting him, but
right. Me either. Yeah.
But for the first time ever, you're seeing a politician stand there and say what he would say if he was at his dinner table. Yeah. And some people are like, well, is there a time and a place? And it's like, yeah, I think that argument could be made, but he's not standing there lying to you behind a straight face like every other one was doing, including Hillary.
Bushes, everybody, every one of them.
Right. The only other one that sometimes, I stood behind a lot of what he talked about, a lot of what he mentioned was Bernie. And I do believe
Sanders,
Bernie was manipulated to support Hillary. I mean, that's what it felt to me when I was looking at it. Now,
me too.
I still don't know. I still don't know like entirely what would happen if he got in power. I mean, that to me, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that so many people, and it kind of, to be honest, it kind of shocked me when I had seen how many people of in places of influence and places of power within some of these independent and conscious and spiritual movements. We're talking about authors, all these sorts of things. When they were getting behind Hillary, I was very shocked, because it made me realize that a lot of times even these people aren't seeing the world quite clearly,
right,
and are living in a little bit of a fantasy land of what they think is going on, and then the spirituality side, right? And I believe very strongly it's as much of a spiritual journey to understand what's going on in the world and understand what's happening as it is to meditate, to clear old belief systems and patterns, and
right.
It's all part and parcel. It's all part of life. It's who you are as a whole. You can't separate my spiritual life, my work life, and then my conspiracy life, and you can't do that. It's all part of the same thing. Right?
Listen, when we get back from break, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we act. Hold on, not break yet. Hold on. When we get back from break, let's talk exactly how we create. A lot of these people in the New Age movement have this denial-based positive thinking concept. I can't think about anything negative, so I never want to look at a reality, what's going on. And also, part of your philosophy, I guess your mission is that you don't like to deal with this New Agey stuff. You don't want to get lost into that part of it too in the collective evolution, not the awakening part, but perhaps I'm rephrasing it wrong here. Is that you want to report on health, science, technology, and accessibility, not New Agey or religious brand of spirituality. And I think that's really an important key that you put in there. So we'll be right back, and we'll be talking with Joe Martino on waking people up. All right, we are back with Joe Martino with Collective Evolution. We're talking about right now a little bit of politics and the cabal and what's going on. But Joe, you mentioned you don't want to get into the New Agey stuff, and I mentioned about, before we went on break, the denial-based positive thinking. Have you experienced that with a lot of perhaps people in your circles who don't want to deal with this, and maybe that's even a motivator of why you got involved what you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's challenging out there because a lot of stuff comes down to semantics, and it's like the word God. God means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and some people see it as a no, don't ever go there word, and some people see it as, hey, God is God, and it could be whatever I want it to be. And I think it's within the semantics that things become complicated, because with the word New Age, some people see that as like, oh, this is just the evolution that we're going on. This is where we're headed, into a New Age movement or a New Age time. Some people see it as, forms of spirituality that are completely off in the clouds, that have no basis on what's actually going on in the world, that are terrified of any form of negativity, right? So there's different ideas of what it is. And for us, why we, still cover consciousness, spirituality, and all that stuff, but try not to call ourselves New Agey is just because of that connotation. Because there comes with it certain levels of, inauthentic spirituality or inauthentic forms of being, where it's like, I will never look at anything that's going on that is negative or talk about it, because if I do talk about it, I'm suddenly attracting it, because every single thought that we do put out there, we're suddenly attracting. But it doesn't really work that way, because if it did work that way, guess what? We'd all be rich. If you thought of an orange, you would suddenly have an orange in your lap. Like, it's not that simple. And to simplify something that much is obviously doing a disservice to a lot of people who now just suddenly want to create their entire lives based on me saying, okay, I'm going to get a Ferrari right now, and that's it. The law of attraction does work, but tell people how it actually works versus just, oh yeah, just think about it and it's there. So yeah, that's kind of why we've tried to sort of steer away from that a little bit, and again, still use that authentic consciousness, that authentic spirituality as it comes through, which again, I'm dressed the way I'm dressed right now. Am I dressed like a spiritual person? I don't know. But again, that's one of those things again.
You're not in your whites.
Right. That's,
right.
It's like, people fall into these boxes. And if we're talking about ego consciousness and stepping out of ego consciousness, all that sort of stuff, it's like people will go, okay, I'm observing my ego. I'm stepping out of my old, who I thought I was. And now I've created a new box for myself. And that new box for myself now has to dress like this and talk like this and have this in my house and do this and do this and do this. It's like, okay, so you went from one ego construct to another. And that's the trouble, I think, sometimes with this new age movement and some of the stuff that's going on, is it's creating a whole nother level of just ego expressing itself, and it's not actually getting through to the authentic self that's trying to come out.
Well, just like with the Cabal and with the mainstream media news, I really truly believe that that the new age has been movement has been co-op too. I mean, Henry Kissinger was talking about co-oping it back in the 70s, and where if you could just get people just to not take spiritual activism, just try to create your own little world in your own little bubble. Don't worry about whatever. Don't worry about what I'm doing here with the Treasury, or the Federal Reserve. Don't worry about that. Just do your own little spiritual thing and create your own little world. So I think that's been co-op to a certain degree as well, where people who go down that road, they human nature is, I don't want to deal with the negative. I don't want to deal with these horrible chemtrails over my head.
There's a dark side to humanity.
I don't want to. I don't want to deal with the glyphosate or the fluoride that's in the water. That's been the biggest scam since the 1930s on humankind, right? And I get it psychologically, you don't want to deal with it, but like you were saying, the law of attraction has to dealing with your shadow work, dealing with your subconscious mind, dealing with how you've been programmed, and you have to look into that because it's so much more powerful than our conscious mind. And I think that's really a lot of solutions is going into your subconscious. But what's your opinion? What you're doing is excellent. But is there any advice you want to give the listeners and the audience out here, how they can unplug if they feel like, something just doesn't seem right, like they say in the Matrix? What can they do to move forward in that direction? What advice can you give them, especially when you have Facebook and Twitter and everybody now is just really coming down hard?
Yeah, I mean, like you were mentioning about dark side, and sometimes how we don't want to look at it out there. I mean, a lot of that too is a reflection of the fact that we don't want to look at it in here, right? And that is something that is so important in our journeys, is to be like, okay, there are aspects to myself I may not want to look at, but you got to look at those things, because the change that happens here, and again, we're seeing this scientifically, we're seeing it consciously, we're seeing it everywhere. When you change inside here, it starts to impact everything that's happening out there. It's how you speak with one another, how your literal physical heart, how it actually communicates with other people. Again, through heart math, we've seen how that works. When you change inside, you're changing the way you're interacting with the rest of the world. So people, how can I make change? How can I do things? Really focus within, get to know yourself, really understand, create self-awareness about who you are and what's going on, and looking at your old belief systems and patterns and stuff as they come up. How do you react to a certain situation? And instead of just saying, well, that situation made me act that way because it was wrong, say, no, but why do I even think it's wrong? What about it is wrong, right? And go there. Ask yourself that question and be, curious to go there. And sometimes you'll find that the majority of situations that you judge in a particular way is entirely a subjective belief that you've thought up or you've implanted in there based on something that's happened in your life. So again, opening up the potential, instead of living a life that's narrow, opening up that potential and saying, okay, hey, we're capable of so much more, and so am I. let's step out of these belief systems and start doing that. So a lot of self-awareness, growing the self-awareness, and then seeing where you align. What are you attracted to? What particular cause do you feel you can be part of? And find a way to help or to be part of that if you can. Small things affecting small groups of people is still incredibly powerful, because consciousness, as it continues to expand and more people become aware, it spreads like wildfire. If you gave the option for a business owner to have word of mouth, like, five people come into their restaurant or something, and they were going to go out and spread via word of mouth that this restaurant was amazing, they would take that any day, because that word of mouth with those 5 people can impact now like thousands, because it just keeps going. And that's why it's like the even what appears to be the smallest things of sharing a piece of information, of talking lovingly to a friend about stuff that's going on in the world, and exploring this stuff, not being really angry with it, but just talking about it, is very important. So to sum it all up, it would just be creating self-awareness and really looking at your own belief systems and patterns, and exposing yourself to new experiences, new ideas, and really finding out, what do I align with, and how can I share that?
That is just perfect, because exactly we're basically a walking hall of mirrors, where everything's a reflection of ourselves. And if we just go within and look at that, we could grow. Now, taking into account, we create our own conspiracies within ourselves. We create our own, we sabotage ourselves often, all the time, which we're not very conscious of. So, when you hear this meme out there, conspiracy theory, I truly believe that's a CIA operative word that's been used to divide, conquer, and to not allow the truth to come out. And I think we're seeing that in action. But how is collective evolution going to address that meme of conspiracy theorists? Because a lot of stuff you're talking about TPP, you're talking about the GCMF, Nogales, you're talking about the murder doctors, and that is, you could go look up Snopes, and they're saying that's just a lie. That's not true. That's not really happening. And outside of you getting your truth out, do you have any strategy within CE to be able to address those issues?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to people feeling or seeing or believing what they want to believe in any particular way, whether they want to go to Snopes or whether they want to go to some other website. I mean, talking about journalism for just a second, if any mainstream journalist did their due diligence, right? If they, on one particular event, and we'll call it 9/11, if they did their due diligence, they would know and would not feel inside themselves at all that they could report the official story. It's absurd that these journalists they state that they live by standards, yet they won't look at the truth of the matter, because it doesn't take long. It takes an hour of research, and right away the official story is not true, and it's not even a conspiracy. It's just basic fact.
Right.
So instead of going out there saying, we don't know what happened. How about just that? How about, hey guys, we don't really know exactly what happened, because I did the research, and what they're saying happened didn't happen. I'm not saying I know what happened, but that didn't happen. That would be a start, and I think that's like one of the big things when it comes to all these different Snopey things and people debunking things, is they're going to the sources, or they're going to the places that are handing down the information top down without questioning anything. So it's like saying, I'm going to go to a textbook that's written by pharmaceutical companies to debunk how you can't cure yourself with diet or something like that, or that you can't be healthy on diet alone. Like, oh, of course, you're going to bunk information to begin with, right? So our own internal processes are, we try not to say anything, or we try not to put anything out there that we don't have some sort of source set up, more than just another website, but whether it's a document, whether it's a whistleblower, whether it's a WikiLeaks document, whether it's, something that's really going to add a lot of weight to a particular topic or a particular point, we won't really report on it. There's things that, are still sitting in our bins, like, okay, we could talk about some of this stuff, but we don't have enough to say. Like, intuitively, we know what's going on there,
right?
But we don't have enough to say it, so we're not going to say it yet, because we know that it's coming. And once it does, it's going to create a way bigger wave once all that proof's there, versus the stuff where it's like, okay, we know this is true, but it's just hard to say. You know what I mean? There are other people who are doing that work, and sure, go ahead. You spread that, do your thing. We're going to try and just wait till we got more to go on.
So, like, for example, I was going to ask, is there anything that you won't touch? And it's probably more so a timely thing, but for example, the alien variable or the satanic cabal that's coming out now, that people are not, it's not just a Democratic Hillary thing. This is across the board. You're talking about elitists, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, whoever they may be, are involved in these satanic occults. And now you can't help but go there without bringing in the alien variable. Is that something that collective evolution will actually go into in the future? Or if you already have?
We've in some way, shape, or form touched on everything that you just mentioned there. With the alien variable,
they just posted yesterday. When you wake up, if you saw this, what would you do?
Good, Joe.
Yeah, the alien variable we talk about a lot. It's one, personally, to me, it's one of the points that I connect with most personally. Like, it's huge. It's monumental. It is a massive, from a spiritual, conscious point of view. It is like, here we are, Europeans are across the water and we're in North America, and we have no idea they exist. We have no idea their culture, their knowledge, what they do, anything like that. Suddenly someone hops in a boat, goes over to the Europeans, finds out, oh, they exist. And then all of a sudden now you're sharing all of the experience, the knowledge, the information, and everything that you once did not know. Your consciousness just went poof, and you expanded. And humanity has been tinkering around with itself for a long time. And that feeling that people have where it's like, something's just not quite right. This world is, there's more. Everybody has that feeling. We chase and chase and chase and chase more materialism, more things, more everything, because, there's something that we're longing for. And that thing we're longing for is an expansion of our experience, the end of the repetitiveness that's just going on here entirely. And while ETs are interacting with certain levels of government and certain levels of people here and there, they're not interacting with all of humanity. And those experiences are not being uploaded to collective consciousness where everybody's, getting it from and feeling and learning and expanding more and more. When that happens, humanity is going to, become an entirely different expression, right? We're going to evolve in a much, much bigger way. And it's not better or worse or anything. It's just, that's the natural process of evolution. And that's where we're going. That's where we're headed, right? And so to me, it's like having this ET point of view is just, it hits on that point inside where it's like, we're capable of so much more. We're here to experience this aspect of things, and it's driving a lot of people. And that's why the ET topic has been so widely important to so many people. And it's been such a big discussion because that feeling inside of like, hey, we're about to open up a whole different freaking can of worms here.
Right.
That's what's going on. But in terms of topics we won't touch, we'll pretty much touch on anything. Talking about reptilians is obviously something that people have a hard time with at times. But
yeah. The issue is, Joe, it's as a news agency as you are, how far ahead of the crowd do you go? You have to kind of lead people with information. If you go too far ahead and you start getting, now David Icke, I think, has been he's been leading that charge for a long time. In fact, I think one of the reasons why we're talking about it right now is probably some of the information David Icke shared 20, 30 years ago. But at the same time, back then, he was so far ahead of the media source that no one could really, they just quickly, their mind just labeled him as a conspiracy theorist or a kook, and thank God he's being validated these days. But I guess you're going to have your team in place and know what's time, because what you're talking about, I think, is critical. In fact, you can't look at American politics or world politics without taking in the alien variable, because if you don't think the alien variable and ET issue is affecting our politics, for example, then you don't understand what Satanism is about. You don't understand the occult. That's who brought the occult in. It was these certain alien groups. And so, and now I think we're going to the next step. I think what you're going to see, and hopefully you're coming out more so with stuff with what's going on with Hillary and WikiLeaks and the satanic issue, because now it's going to spread to Republicans. It's going to spread to the elitists. It's going to spread to all these top people who are mind controlled and bought into this hypnotic belief of Luciferian belief. And I don't see it so much as probably you see it as I see it, as this this religious Satan versus God. I see it more as just aliens who have come over, manipulated mankind. A certain bad group of aliens have manipulated us who are involved in the occult, and some good group of aliens perhaps are coming in to help us, whatever it may be. So these are creator gods, as we probably call it in a lot of our religious texts, but they're not the ultimate energy of God. They're not the creator, they're not the final piece there. But I think you have to be careful about leading people to that. I think once you do the stepping stones, you go to you bring out the Satanism, then you'll bring it to the ETs. If that's already your plan.
Yeah, I mean, we focused a lot on the ET side when it comes to all the documents, all the whistleblowers, everybody, anything that's very easily available. We've spoken on that a lot. Haven't yet gone as to the depths of starting to talk about even some of the stuff intuitively that you feel like for example, even the whole ET thing, like the ETs it's like humans. They're just an expression of who we are, and even reptilians doing what they're doing is not quote unquote negative. It's an experience, so we can feel trapped, so that we can learn what that feels like to feel trapped, and we can come out of that. And they're just playing a role in their own sense. And
right.
When you really step back to the neutrality aspect of it all, it's like you see what's playing out and you see what's going on. You're like, okay, yeah, this is a whole journey. And even those things that people are going to be like, oh, well, these ETs, we're going to have to throw them in jail, or we're going to have to do it. It's like, no, it's like we have to break a cycle. They're playing a role for us to do a particular thing. And once it comes to a point, I mean, they're going to have to face the fact from their own consciousness, from their own reality, right, that we can relate to in some way, but not entirely, that they did this, that they took this action, that they made people go through this whole journey. And it's an evolutionary journey for them too. We're not the only ones on an evolutionary journey, right? These ETs, these reptilians are going through that same evolutionary journey, right? And we're part of that. We're part of that circle. We're part of that whole thing. So these things, like, can you say that in an article on collective illusion put out there? Not quite. It's a little bit more difficult, right?
You have a lot of background.
Right, because it does take a lot of understanding. I mean, there's people who are still saying, oh, now the Republicans are in power and the Democrats and this and that. And like, we're identified with political parties here that are really not different from each other at all. And yet we're going to start talking about that. You know what I mean? Like it's challenging, right?
It's a big step.
Kind of like it's meeting people with where they are. And we like to save those types of conversations at this point in time for what we call the campfire talks. So the times where, you're with people and you can go into these deeper things, these deeper understandings around, some of the more intimate settings, or like what Guy is doing with Cosmic Disclosure there. It's behind a paywall, so not everybody can see it. It can't go as viral as easily, but even some people still think it's batshit crazy. But that's, it's an easier place to do it.
Do you believe in that 10% rule that, you get 10% of people understanding this level of consciousness, that 100th one monkey syndrome sends that throughout the rest of the consciousness, collective consciousness?
Yeah, I do believe that there's a collective consciousness that once it obtains a certain level of experiences going back and forth between humans that understand things, you know what I mean? And you've now created enough out there that everybody can start drawing from that. Yeah.
Right. Well, we had Daniel Brinkley on the show a little while ago, and he mentioned, I don't know if you know him, but he had he had a near-death experience back in the 70s, and he was struck by lightning, and he wrote the book Saved by the Light and explained he had this revelation through the spiritual experience gave him a lot of prediction. He predicted what's going to happen with Russia and then blah, blah, blah. And he said, on the show that he believes that we will be introduced to aliens come next year, sometime, the first part of the year or the second part of the year, that we're very close to an alien introduction. And he said on record, and he said that the Pope will be doing the introductions.
So we're talking introduction, physical being to physical being?
Yeah. Now, whether that's true or not, I mean, who knows? But I personally think we could have been aligned with that perhaps if Hillary got in play, and maybe now a lot of the folks are rethinking everything. I think these globalists, these New World Order folks, are these Satanists. I think they're going back to the drawing board right now and figuring out. And one thing, tell me your opinion on this. Since their person didn't get in, and they're eventually going to have to collapse the economy, collapse everything to really get this full New World Order control over everyone in place, right? Have the haves and the have-nots. Now, since Trump kind of was the trump card, threw him off task, and they may be coming up with a new plan. Do you think that this new plan, that whatever they come up with, or the Empire Strikes Back plan, as you say, as people say, do you think that's going to maybe mess things up for them, to make more mistakes, because now they're rushing to implement this crash, whatever, that now we're waking up collectively, and we're now making them make a move on our terms, or rather than their terms. I hate to say ours, because really we're all one. We have a we consciousness. But do you think that aspect's going to maybe make them make a mistake because they're now rushing, trying to confuse people more so, and they're going to be making a lot more mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, in very simple terms, I do believe that their mistakes are going to increase. An unpopular statement, but I will say that I do not believe they even have a chance of executing a new world order at this point. I think the game is in essence over, and we're seeing the fallout of the dragon's tail whipping around, hitting last little bits. But I mean, the dragon's pretty much slayed in a sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I hate to turn it into a battle or a war. It's just a metaphor for people to understand it. I do think that, they're going to do what they want to do because that's what they're programmed to do, right? In their mind and their programming, that's what's playing out. And there's a certain level of the tail end of this, as we call it, which could last, I mean, I don't know how long, 10, 20 years, I don't really know. But that's still challenging humanity to finish through. Right. To really find yourself, right. Because through the challenges, through that having to discern, really learn discernment between the real news and the fake news, really learn discernment to what are these elite doing? What is really going on? That's a big part of our journey still here. And they're going to play that role as we continue to need it. But I do believe that the mistakes are going to come in the plenty because it's part of the agreement to continue to unfold and understand what's going on here as a whole.
Listen, and I think this is the most exciting times to be alive, as well as the scariest, because as this dragon tail's, swiping around, we're at a time in our evolution that we can destroy a world very quickly with the technology that we have. And so I think we need to be conscientious about that aspect too, because yes, we're here to learn contrast, and we have learned contrast through suffering for the most part. How much more suffering are we going to learn between now and we truly evolve to that next level, as you're talking about? I mean, we're in uncharted territory right now. We have no idea what's going to be coming. We don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. Mm-hmm. And so, waking people aware, I think, is critical. And I'm so glad that what you guys are doing is bringing that level of consciousness, because if people have that ability to look at a Star Trek future, I call it a Star Trek future, where, we've had our problems back then, but we evolved, we got past that, now we're exploring the stars, and we're, and we're interacting with other alien beings and whatever the case may be. I mean, truly, I have to say, Gene Roddenberry was such a visionary, for what people could go to. But can you see now, I see that you see a positive future, but do you see more so, a lot of people who are aware of this see a very negative next year or next 5 years. What do you see? Yeah,
I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Again, through our subjective perceptions, right? Do I think things, quote unquote, could get messy in the next year and there's chaos? Absolutely, but I don't see it as negative. I see it as you got to think of it this way. We would agree that, without using it in a derogatory sense, but we would agree that a lot of people are asleep, right? Yeah. That we're not quite sure what's really going on in our reality. Now, what is it going to take if the alarm clock's already ringing? What is it going to take to wake people up? And, is it that we got to go in with a bucket of water and soak them? Do we have to give them a smack? Like, what's it going to take to wake them up?
Turn the football game off.
Well, exactly, right? And
grab them and shake them. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's what I think, the chaos that needs to ensue is really just about what is it going to take to continue to push? Because we're all, like Tio was saying, we're all voting all the time with our consciousness. What do we need? What do we need to see it? What do we need to see it? What do we need to see it? And the more where free will comes in is the more times we choose to go within and wake up and decide to look at the information and share the information and live by that information and live with alignment in ourselves, the more we speed up the process. And that's why people doing this kind of work is very important. like what you guys are doing with this show.
Absolutely. And God, we could talk about so much what's going on. And I love the fact of Collective Evolution, how you guys are bringing the truth out no matter, because one last question I have before we close out the show. Are you have been ever in fear of your life since you're dealing with these? I mean, you talk about the shadow government, and like Kevin Shipp, he's a ex-CIA guy. He's talking about how, they go after people, not only, as we know, they're killing holistic doctors, but they have a special IRS that goes after people. They have special parts of the government that, do you think that's waning down? You think that's been neutralized since this election, or do you think that's still going to continue?
I think, there's still some level of agreement that has to happen for your life to be over in this particular incarnation. And if I was faced with people standing at the door,
the guys in black.
There would probably be fear. However, I don't feel any fear inside, because there's a part of me that believes it's just not part of my path at this time to be taken out or something like that. Right. Does it mean I'm not careful or, at times about things in life? Well, of course, there's a level of care that you take, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. And I do believe over time, yes, more of that stuff will continue to dwindle. But some people are in essence playing the role of leaving this physical reincarnation so as to play a role of helping to wake people up, saying, hey, look, they're taking people out. Do you know what I mean? I don't think everything is an accident or anything like that. I think that there's
reasons for that.
Perfection and reason to it. Yeah.
No, I agree. And everyone who has been going on has been a motivation for me to talk. I mean, I wouldn't be doing a lot of the talk show if I didn't see these holistic doctors being taken out, or Dr. Thompson lying, or, whistleblowing on that. So, and they're martyrs, whether they're alive or not, but they're actually, and you great point, they're motivating people. And think of who your mentors have been and to motivate you to do what you're doing, because what you're sharing is just so needed right now in our collective society. And I'm so grateful to have you on and sharing that with us. So real quick here, Joe, is there anything how people want to reach you, or best way to get involved in your mission and what you're doing with Collective Evolution?
And your Indiegogo campaign?
Yeah, sure. Our website, collective-evolution.com, is where we post all of our daily articles, all that sort of stuff. We have a bunch of stuff that's going to be coming out soon that's newer, like really diving into the CE News platform and that sort of stuff, which you can contribute to at cenews.tv. We're setting up a whole members area, all that sort of stuff as well. And the purpose of that is not only to support our work, but also to, kind of give people extended footage, extended stuff, like allow people to dive into some of the stuff we're doing a lot more deeper. I would say just the most you can do to share anybody that's in independent media or, this radio show, anything like that, that you feel is doing good work. There's so much power in spreading that work to other people. If you're comfortable with it, obviously, but
absolutely,
I urge that because it's important, whether it's Collective Evolution or anybody else that you feel connected to, share it, put it out there.
Absolutely. And what an enlightening conversation. What an enlightening fire chat. Campfire chat.
Talk.
And so, Joe, we'd love to have you back on, because one thing I want to talk about in the future is, and I know Teal's talking about it and a few other folks, is building these intentional communities, how to intentionally live in these intentional communities where we're bringing that next level of consciousness together. And I think it's spreading, but I love to get more information and share that with people too. And I think you're right on with getting that out there. So thank you. Cool. And we'll have you back if you're willing.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Joe and Sandra and everybody. And we will talk to you all soon. Have a great weekend.